Let's show our players that power creep won't save them from these goblins here on DM Dungeon Mastery. Now always remember the #1 rule of DMing. You're not trying to kill the player's characters, but you are trying to run the monsters like they want to kill the player characters. No mercy. And as always, of course, my goblins are going to be different from your goblins, so if you're running a high fantasy setting where everything is super lighthearted, maybe your goblins just live in society and they don't act like bandits and drag people off and eat them alive. I like the fact that goblins are evil. I like having evil races in my fantasy games, so my goblins are evil. So our party of adventurers today consists of a half-orc barbarian, a dragonborn wizard, a human cleric, and a human rogue. Now the players' levels for this combat specifically are all 4th. However, this will carry over for higher level player characters. You'll just have a little bit more to account for. The wizard being able to cast Wall of Force might make this fight a little bit more difficult to run in ambush, but that's kind of the point when you get to higher level. Player characters get stronger, they have powerful abilities, but I've made goblins that are meant for higher level play too, so just replace all of the low tier goblins with higher tier ones and it should work out generally the same. So here we are in our combat scenario, and allow me to set the scene for you. The crackling fire dances against the stillness of night, its warm glow casting long shadows across the moss-covered ruins. The air is thick with the hum of insects, their chorus weaving through the dark, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. The woods around you seem alive, but distant, silent, and watchful. The barbarian and wizard stand vigilant. Their eyes are scanning the quiet gloom as the cleric and rogue sleep soundly in their tents, unaware of the world slipping by. The weight of the night presses in, thick and heavy, as though the very trees themselves are listening. So with the barbarian and the wizard standing watch, normally you would ask them for a perception check, so allow me to do that for both of them now. Barbarian? That's pretty high. Then the wizard. Much lower. And now it's time for the goblins that are approaching. Stealth check. Now they have a +6 to stealth, so let's see how well they can sneak up on the party. That's a 3 +6 for a 9. That's very low, so the barbarian definitely hears something, which means no surprise round for the goblins. The barbarian player is most likely going to shout very loudly and wake the other 2 characters up. So let's start initiative off, shall we? So I'm a fan of group initiative because rolling individual initiatives takes way too long, but here's the problem with group initiative. It becomes very predictable because you know your team's going to get to go next. You're going to have an easy time planning out everything. So let's do something with a twist. Let's do Greyhawk initiative on top of group initiative. So what we're going to do is I'm going to roll for the players first. So it's going to be a d6, a 1. So as long as I don't roll a 1 for the goblins, they go first. They go first with a 2. Now with Greyhawk initiative, at the end of every combat round, we're going to re-roll initiative to make it very unpredictable. So the goblins might get to go back to back, or the players might get to go back to back. It's a very unpredictable, very swingy combat. It makes it a little bit more scary to engage with things now. Alright, let's kick this battle off. High impact, high action, high intensity. So let's see what the goblins do first. Now this has been translated into common for most of you common speakers out there, but in Goblin they would be shouting, "Get the booyag! Keep the big ones busy!" You would see the grunts then charging up after hearing this strange goblin language that they would be speaking. They would be using focus fire tactics. They're not going to fight fair, remember. If the players can focus fire stuff down, so can the goblins. They know that Booyag is dangerous, Booyag being magic, so they're going to probably swarm the wizard. The one grunt from the back who's been tasked with this super special mission here is probably going to try to jump on the back of the orc, covering his eyes, keeping him held in place for as long as possible while his friends take care of the wizard. So I'm going to roll for the goblin. He's going to try to grapple check the orc with the additional thing that is going to say the orc is blinded if he fails. Alright, so here we go. The grapple check. The first things first is going to be the Goblin. Goblin's not very strong, he's not very, hardy, so he's got a 2, and now he's got to beat the Barbarian. Alright, he's got a +3 to this. He rolled a 3 too, but he got a 6, so he does manage to keep the Goblin off of the back of his head. But now, I would say he's probably going to be focused on that Goblin, unless he just wants to run past him, but that Goblin failed in his mission. That was his action. Now for the Grunts, they're going to make a swarm of attacks on this Wizard. Alright, here come the attacks on the Wizard. The first one, that hits. The second, that's going to miss. And the third, that's going to hit. So 2 hits on the Wizard right off the bat. These are both a d6 plus 2 damage. So that would be 2d6 plus 4 damage on the Wizard, which is a 7 damage. That's a lot for a Wizard to handle. Now, unfortunately for our Wizard friend, that's not all of the Goblins' attacks for the turn. We still have plenty more to go. And the archers that are out in these trees in the darkness here are going to be making 4 attacks against this Wizard as well. Now I'm going to do a group stealth check for all of the Goblins out in the trees again, because they failed their initial one when they were sneaking up on the camp. These are the Goblins that are in the trees, in the darkness. The Wizard's really not going to be paying attention, so I'm going to give them advantage on this, unfortunately. A 23, they're hidden. The Wizard has no idea that they're out there. So now they're going to make 4 attacks at advantage against the Wizard, who is surrounded by Goblins. So we're going to do these one at a time here. So the first one, that's a hit. The second, that's a miss. The third, that is a hit. Fourth, that is a miss. I'm rolling terrible, but even with my terrible rolls, 2 of them still hit. So these are going to be plus 2d6s plus 2, but they also have Fury of the Small, which will add another 2 from each of them. Or a total of 2 from each of them. So let's see how much more damage. Oh, that's going to hurt. That's a 16 points of damage that this Wizard is going to take, which will knock him unconscious, being that he is at 15 health. So my math was actually off by 2 points. They would have had an additional 2 more points of damage that would have dealt. The Wizard is unconscious. One of those arrows would have been the one that knocked them unconscious, so he didn't take any sort of death saving throw failures. But suddenly this fight is starting off, and it's not even the player character's turns yet, and the Wizard is already unconscious. And we still have 2 more Goblins who haven't taken their turns yet, so let's see what these next 2 Goblins do. So for the initial assault with all the Grunts charging in, I didn't have them roll stealth checks because the Barbarian is literally looking in that direction when they were charging up, so narratively it wouldn't make sense that he can't see them running in from the darkness. Now, unfortunately for him, he doesn't see this single Goblin Blackblade sneaking up from the darkness here. So I'm going to allow this Goblin to make a stealth check, and this Goblin has a +7 because his dexterity is slightly higher, being that he is a rogue. So let's see if the Barbarian catches wind of him approaching. With a 17, I believe that is going to exceed the Barbarian's passive perception. Yes, it will. So the Barbarian does not know. Now I know normally, I think rules is written, the Barbarian would get a roll of perception, but I'm just gonna rule it like this for this because it's, it's just an example. So the Blackblade sneaks up on the Barbarian, much like that assassin sneaks up on Tony Montana from Scarface, and let's see what's gonna happen here. Alright, the Blackblade has unseen attacker, so that means this attack roll has advantage, and he has a +5 to hit, and he has a poison-coated scimitar. Let's see if he can land this hit on this Barbarian. For a 24, that's absolutely going to hit. Now the Barbarian does need to make a Constitution saving throw here because this Blackblade does have venom on his blade here, so the Barbarian has a +5 to his Constitution. And that's not going to do it with an 8, so let's see how much damage this Blackblade does. So the initial stab does a d6 plus 3. He's going to add his Fury of the Small, which will give that an additional +1, so we'll make that 4. And now the poison comes in with 2d8, and this Barbarian is not raging yet because he's hadn't had a turn yet, so 13 damage. That's a pretty big amount of damage against the Barbarian, so let's see here. So that's going to bring our barbarian friend from 47 down to 34 from that stab into his lower back. And I forgot to add sneak attack onto that also because this goblin is a rogue, so the barbarian actually takes an additional 2, which will bring him down to 32. So we have our final goblin within this tribe, or this search party, that has not yet taken its turn. That is the Booyag, so let's see what's going to happen next. So the Booyag is going to wander into the camp. Seeing the barbarian distracted with the 2 goblins not facing her direction, she's going to raise her hand as this green energy coalesces, and she's going to Ashnazgul Nagul and cast Polymorph, and let's see if the barbarian can succeed this saving throw. Alright, unfortunately for our barbarian, he doesn't have any pluses to this. He has to make a wisdom saving throw with a DC of 12, so let's see if he can roll high enough. And he doesn't roll high enough. Unfortunately, the barbarian gets polymorphed into a squirrel. Alright, so I lied. Not a squirrel. She polymorphed him into a chicken. And she is a goblin, so she's going to back away now into the darkness again, and she's going to make a stealth check as she's concentrating on this spell. She does have a +6 to this, so let's see. She's not very hidden in the back as she's muttering this concentration, trying to focus on the spell. Her hand is glowing in the darkness, which just slightly reveals her position. And that concluded the goblins' round of combat. Just look at the amount of damage that they caused in one round. They polymorphed the barbarian into a chicken, they knocked the wizard unconscious, and now the rogue and the cleric haven't even stood up from their beds yet. So just making your goblins have a strategy or a plan when they run into combat will make them much more formidable, even if you were just using the base ones from the monster manual. But because I've made goblin stat blocks for you to use, by the way, you should go check the video out if you want to see me break down a couple of the goblins that I'm using here. You should go do that. But even if you now have more formidable goblins that are using tactics, it's going to make them much more deadly. So let's see what the rest of the players can do here to try to save their friends. Alright, so as we move into the player's turn for this combat, you're going to notice something right off the bat, and we're going to have to change this on the fly. The cleric and the rogue were both just sleeping, and surely they're not wearing their armor while they're sleeping, so that cleric's AC with 15 with the chain shirt is actually going to go down to 10 because he's not wearing his armor, but he does have his shield, so we'll let him get the 12. The rogue, on the other hand, is apparently wearing studded leather. He probably isn't going to have that studded leather on because he was sleeping, but it's light armor, so I'll allow him to keep his armor on. But the cleric, unfortunately, he's not sleeping in his armor. That's just how the game works, unless he would risk that and wake up with a point of exhaustion. It depends on how you rule it. I would say he's not sleeping in his armor. So he's got a 12 AC as he grabs his shield in a panic and he stands up from prone. Now that's going to bring him down to 15 feet of movement left. He does not have Healing Word, which is the ranged bonus action healing spell. I know that's sacrilegious. Most cleric players are going to take that, but for this instance, he does have Cure Wounds. His initial instinct is to save his friend, so he is going to tromp over to the unconscious wizard and he's going to cast Cure Wounds, which will heal him 2d8 plus 3 because this is D&D 2024 now, so we're going to use that rolling. I like the healing update. I don't really know much about any of the other spells, but for the healing spells, I allow players to use the double die for the healing levels, so the cleric will heal the wizard to 8 hit points, which will bring him up from unconscious. He will be prone on the ground. Alright, so I cut myself off there because my hotkeys are on OBS are set to my numpad, and I just cut off the part where I said the wizard had dropped everything he was holding, which would have been his staff, and he is unconscious on the ground. Now it's the rogue's turn. The rogue in a situation like this is probably one of the least effective player characters. They don't have a lot of things to do to deal with hordes of enemies. They're really good at taking down one large enemy. They are your elite killers. They are not good when there's a ton of trash mobs like goblins swarming a campsite. So the rogue is going to do what the rogue is going to do here. He's going to stand up from prone, see that all of these goblins are swarming in. He's going to make a stealth check inside of the tent just to try to get an advantage on this next attack roll that he's going to make. So he does have a +5 to this. Actually, he has a +7 to this. Sorry, I'm trying to keep track of all these. I have like 7 different stat blocks I'm trying to follow here. 25. He stands up and remains incredibly quiet inside of this tent while the chaos is going on outside. The goblins are shouting. They are getting ready to attack the cleric now as he walks up. The rogue aims his short bow, drawing it, and fires at the closest goblin to him. And he is going to make this attack roll at advantage, and he has a +5 to hit. Hopefully he can hit this goblin with a 15 AC for a 20 total. That's gonna hit, absolutely. So the rogue gets 2d6 from sneak attack, plus the bow's damage, which is another d6, and he has a +3 from his dex mod. It's gonna be 3d6 damage on that goblin. For 13, that arrow pierces the goblin through the back of his throat. It comes out the front as he plummets over on top of the wizard's body as he is coming to from consciousness. And the rogue is going to spend the remainder of his movement probably to just move into the bushes over here and just try to stay out of harm's way the best he can. Unfortunately, it's not a good situation. Now I realized I forgot to do the barbarian chicken's turn. So the chicken, if your player was a meta gamer, he would have said, oh, I run into the bonfire, so I take the damage and I turn back into a barbarian. I would say, no you don't, because the chicken does not want to run into the fire. You would still want to be aggressive towards the goblins though, so the chicken would probably get an attack on the goblin here. It flies up and it tries to make an attack on this goblin here. It probably doesn't have any pluses to this attack, and it probably just does a point of piercing damage if it hits, so let's see if it hits. A natural 20 on the chicken attack. What do you know? You only roll them when you don't need them, so the chicken doesn't have any die to double. I'll be nice, I'll say it does a whole whopping 2 points of piercing damage. It pecks the goblin and it stabs its iris. The goblin lets out this horrific scream as the chicken bites its eye, and it tries to grab the chicken on its next turn. Now remember what I said at the beginning of combat when we rolled initiative. We're doing Greyhawk initiative, so we have to roll initiative again. So I'm gonna roll for the player characters. Okay, they got a 6. As long as the goblins don't roll a 6 again, the players get to go again before the goblins take their next turn. And that's it. That's a 3. So the players actually get to take their next turn before the goblins get to take theirs. Alright, so the players get initiative again because they won initiative. So the rogue player demands that they get to go first because they're a rogue player. So you know how they are. The rogue is going to make a stealth check here with the +7 to their stealth. Only a 12. I don't even know if that's most of the goblins' passive perception. Actually, seems to be. So, yeah, the rogue is hidden from most of the goblins somehow. They're more focused on the current threats that are in front of them. So the rogue is going to, look around. He's going to see that the chicken is being attacked by this other goblin, and he's going to fire at that goblin because this goblin is technically hidden behind this one, so he can't shoot at him. So he's going to fire at this goblin here. He has unseen attacker. So that is going to be, I believe I said, a +5 to hit. If he hits, he gets sneak attack. So 23 is absolutely going to hit. So that's 3d6 +3. Let's see what happens to this poor goblin with only 5 hit points. Yeah, he's done. He gets shot. The rogue pulls the bow back again as the goblin's holding the angry barbarian chicken who is raging, trying to go for his eyeball, and an arrow just hits him in the temple, coming out the other side, as he just has an arrow skewered into his head now as he just plops backward onto the ground. And then after that, the rogue will more than likely stay in this tight brush here, probably even backing up a little bit more. So that's going to be the rogue's turn. So let's see what the cleric does next. Alright, so the cleric is trying to protect his wizard friend. So the cleric is going to walk up to these goblins here, and he is going to make... you know what? He's not going to do that. He's going to use Sacred Flame on one of these grunts here. So this grunt has to make a dexterity saving throw. Thankfully, the goblins are pretty decent at dexterity saves. The priest's DC is 13, so the goblin has to be at a 13 or he's going to take a d8 radiant damage. He succeeds. He dodges out of the way as this giant pillar of golden flame apparates from above him. The cleric will then just simply step up and try and interpose himself between the wizard and this grunt here. And now the wizard is probably going to get to take his turn. So the wizard is going to stand up from prone. That's more than likely what I would imagine they would do. So he will stand up from prone.
My wounds are great, but I am still a master of the arcane.
And he will cast Magic Missile at this goblin in front of him. He's going to throw all 3 darts at him just to try to get him off of him. So these automatically hit, and it doesn't deal enough damage to kill the goblin. The goblin goes down to 1 hit point as they hit his body. Oh boy, it's getting a little scary here. Yeah, after that, he's not going to take an attack of opportunity at only 8 hit points, so he will just stand up on the log and hope that him and the cleric can hold the line here, as that's going to be their turn, other than the barbarian chicken, who will now try to make a beak attack at the goblin blackblade here. So let's see, maybe he'll get lucky and roll another nat 20. With a 9, that's unfortunately not going to hit. The chicken goes on a rampage trying to go after the next target there, and it's not going to work out for him. So now it is the goblin's turn in combat. So I made a mistake. It's not the goblin's turns yet, because those magic missiles would have killed the goblin because they each deal +1. So the goblin would have gotten obliterated, and the wizard probably still wouldn't move from where he's at, because this goblin would get an attack of opportunity if he moved out of his range. So I just wanted to update you really quickly before we moved into the goblin's turn. So for the goblin's turns here, I'm going to start off with the Booyag. She will remain in the darkness, but she does see the Dragonborn and the cleric standing there after they just dealt with some of her men. She's going to cast Ray of Sickness at the Dragonborn. So the wizard Dragonborn must make a Constitution saving throw here, and that's not a good ability score to be targeting against the wizard because his Constitution is very low. So let me see what his DC here. Okay, so he has a +1, so let's see if he can succeed this, otherwise he might be going down again. 14, I believe that is enough, and yes it is. The Ray of Sickness comes flying out of the darkness towards the wizard, and he somehow gets hit with it, but his body just staves off that poison, so he has survived. So that is going to be the Booyag's turn. She's just going to remain in the darkness out here. We'll say she makes a stealth check while she's out here. Not going to make too much of a difference. Only a 10, so probably not that much of a difference in the grand scheme of things here. Now, let's see what the other goblins do. Okay, so the archers are going to go next because they are going to fire. Some of them are going to try to hit the wizard, and if he goes down, then they're going to start working on the cleric because that's another Booyag that they see from their perspective. So let's do some goblin archer attacks against the wizard here. So I'm going to say this goblin and this goblin are going to make their attacks first here. These are going to be... well, actually, you know what? We'll do a stealth check first to see if they're hidden, because they'll have advantage on these. But they're definitely hidden, so they have advantage on these attack rolls. These are +2 to hit. Let me find their stat block. I lied, they're not +2, they're +4 to hit. That was my mistake. I probably messed up on that earlier, but it's okay because the fight is still going in the goblin's favor. So 1 at the wizard. That's definitely going to hit with a 21. The second goblin, that's definitely going to hit with a 22. So let's see how much damage he takes before I do anything else. So the first goblin deals 4 damage, so that's going to bring the wizard down to 4 hit points. The second goblin hits with his 4. That's really cocked. I'm going to roll that again for 6 more points. That will knock the wizard unconscious again. The wizard stands up on the log after hitting that goblin with those magic missiles, and then another 2 arrows come flying out of the darkness and hit him as he just plops unconscious over the log again and is in a pool of his own blood. Now the cleric is there, being the main sole target, as these other goblins are going to make 2 more archer ranged short bow attacks at him with advantage, +4 to hit. Let's see if they hit. They only have to beat a 12. The first one hits, and then the second one also hits. So that cleric is going to take 4. He's actually going to take 5 because they're going to put Fury of the Small on that. 11 damage. That's a lot of damage. As he gets hit with the arrows, they come flying in from 2 sides. His shield is focused on the grunt, but the arrows come flying overhead, hitting him in these very vulnerable spots in his... Well, he's not wearing armor, so in the spots where his shield is not up in front of him. Now, this black blade here is focused on the chicken, but he is going to dive into the bushes here, I think. Yeah, he's going to dive into the bushes here, trying to get away from the chicken. The chicken gets an attack of opportunity. It's not going to hit, unfortunately. And now the black blade gets a stealth check. Okay, his stealth check is +7, so let's see if he succeeds. With a natural 20, they have no idea he's there. So he will do that, and then I will say he will probably come charging out right at the cleric. Let's see if he gets this attack off at advantage here. And these are going to be +5 to hit. Well, this one attack is +5 to hit. 15, that's going to hit. The cleric needs to make a constitution saving throw here. As soon as I find his stat block, he's got a +1. Not very high. Let's see what happens. He does not succeed that saving throw, so he is going to take the full brunt of this blade stabbing into him. So he's going to take the sneak attack damage, then the blade's damage, and then the poison damage. So that's 4 die worth of damage, and that's going to be an additional +3. So let's see what happens here. This is not looking good for the cleric. 22, that is enough, as the cleric is unfortunately assailed with these arrows from all sides. He drops to one knee and he starts making this prayer to Palor to save him in this moment. And before he can utter the prayer, the goblin comes in and shanks him right in the side, right up under his rib cage, and he falls unconscious. Alright, and for this party, they only have one character left standing. So at this point, the rogue can either stay and sacrifice himself for these people whom he cares about, or he can run to live another day. Let's see who wins the initiative roll first. So this is for the players. Oh no, they rolled a 1. Now let's see for the goblins. They rolled a 5, so the goblins get to go again after they just went. So here's what the goblins would do in this scenario. These 2 creatures that they are in front of are Booyag. They are magic people. They don't like magic unless their own, shamans are casting this magic. So the cleric is unconscious. The wizard is unconscious. They are more than likely going to coup de grace the cleric, seeing that he was able to use some strange booyag to bring back the wizard from unconsciousness. So, I mean, really, it doesn't make sense to even make an attack roll here, but rules as written, there would be an attack roll, so we'll do the Black Blade's attack first at advantage. I mean, if he hits, it's an auto crit. It's an auto crit. The cleric fails 2 death saving throws, and then for the regular grunt goblin. And for the regular grunt goblin, he only has a +4, but this also has advantage, so... Well, actually, he doesn't have to do that because those goblins actually don't have to do that because the cleric is paralyzed. The spider poison paralyzed him from the blade, so they instead are going to do that to the wizard because they know that that cleric is going to make for good eating later on. So... yeah, same things. They're more than likely going to hit. He's going to get hit twice. He's going to fail 2 death saving throws from each hit, which would cause him to be at 4 failed death saves, which means the wizard is dead. So I will delete the wizard from there to show that he is no longer with us, unfortunately. Now, the barbarian is still a chicken. Barbarian doesn't understand what's happening. His brain is a chicken brain. The rogue, I don't believe, is truly hidden, so the goblins at this point now are going to start moving into the camp a little bit, and they are going to try to get the rogue before he runs away. Let's see if they can reach with their movement here. So these goblins are going to move in 25 feet here. I'm going to pause and move all of them really quickly. And now, here we go. The rogue is in the back. He is not hidden. He did not have the action economy to hide himself. So these goblin archers are going to make attacks on him with what they have. Now, they don't really have a place to hide, so they're not necessarily going to have any sort of advantage here. Only 3 of them can see him from where they're at, so these are +4 to hit. So the first attack will just hit. The second attack will miss, and the third attack is a natural 20. So that's not good. Alright, let's see what happens here. Let's see if he can even survive this. So he's going to take, this is from the first hit, he's going to take 7 points of piercing damage. That will bring him down to 19, and then he gets crit for 2 more d6 damage, which will deal another 9 points of piercing damage, bringing him down to 10. He's still alive currently. Now the booyag will kind of move up and see him in the back there within the bushes, and she will cast a spell. Alright, she's going to cast Ray of Sickness. She can cast these at will because she is a goblin. She can cast Grease and Ray of Sickness just at will, so she's going to fire a Ray of Sickness. Now the rogue has to succeed a saving throw here, or he is going to take 2d8 poison damage. So let me find the rogue. Okay, here he is. Mr. Rogue, you have to make a Constitution saving throw with a +2. Let's see if this bad luck continues for the booyah, because she wasn't able to get this off on the wizard earlier. 21 will succeed. He does not get hit with that poison damage. And I believe that is all of the goblins' turns. They're going to move the rest of their action that they can up here. And yeah, so I'm going to fast forward essentially what's going to happen here. So as it comes to the players' turns, the rogue is going to hide and just run into the darkness. Unfortunately, he has to leave his friends. He lives to tell the tale. Now, the chicken, the angry chicken that is squawking around, going haywire, the booyag will walk up and she will take the chicken by the neck and place it into a bag of holding that she had stolen from another adventuring party. And that chicken will then be taken later to the camp to be eaten, probably as the barbarian. Now, he will go down fighting more than likely. This could become a rescue mission, but that would be up to the DM's discretion. And also the cleric being that he is paralyzed for the next hour, will be taken away to the goblin camp to probably be cooked over a spit and devoured. I have been DM Dungeon Mastery. I hope you liked this video. This was just an example on how to run goblins in a very vicious, efficient manner. Don't feel bad when your players are rolling bad on their rolls for saving throws. Just play the goblins how the goblins are going to act. They know that magic casters are dangerous. Now, that wizard player might get upset and might say he didn't get a chance, but they decided to camp here where they knew that this place was infested with goblins. So if you ask me, it kind of just, that's how the cookie crumbles. Sometimes player death happens like that. So yeah, this has been DM Dungeon Mastery. I hope you liked this first episode in a series of creature tactic videos that I'm going to be doing. Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you to all of my patrons who are supporting me. I can't do this stuff without you. I hope all of your future rolls are 20s. I will see you guys in the next one. I'm not saying goodnight. I'm just saying thank you.